Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to take some birdcage measurements on your C2 Corvette birdcage before you cut it apart to do your rest repair or to fix crash damage. So be sure to stick around. So I'm making this video because a lot of people have been asking me for help repairing their birdcage, whether it's crash damage or it's rusty or they're piecing one together. They need help on the dimensions because they really don't exist on the internet. So I want to make this video to show you how I'm going to take measurements on this car before I cut it apart. I'll show you some more of the damage that we have to replace and repair, but I just want to make a couple quick fixtures, show you what I would do to fix certain things, and then that way you can do the same thing on your car, because every Corvette's different. Not all of them are the same. They're more like coach built rather than, you know, being like a penny where everything looks basically the same on them. These are coach built, so you're going to have variances. So I want to help you make your car just the way it was whenever it was new, not necessarily like this car. So first of all, the most important thing is to make sure your birdcage is level and square before you start. The next thing is you want to make sure that you don't cut it apart before you take your measurements and you take your pictures and make your fixtures. You also want to make sure that you start from your front to the back of the birdcage and focus on the windshield opening. Those are two very important parts. That may sound like the whole birdcage, but you want to work from the front to this pillar to that pillar, while working on the windshield. Those are kind of the most important pieces. And then on coupes specifically, you obviously have to worry about getting the doors to fit the roof, but that's a whole nother conversation. The best reference you have is in front of you, your birdcage in its current state, whatever state it's in, that has all the measurements that you need. And even pieces of fiberglass like this can tell you a lot of information. So don't throw anything away, do your best to save things, and try to get creative whenever you're coming up with your measurements, fixtures, and templates. This birdcage specifically needs a lot of work. It needs the rockers replaced. This car was wrecked. There's a lot of crash damage right here. There's also a little bit of rust. It's bowing here, and this pillar has some rust. Both rockers need replaced. The gutters and drip rails are really rusty, and there's some rust on this pillar underneath, so both sides need that type of attention. This pillar is okay on the windshield. This windshield frame is okay, except for this corner here. There's a couple little holes here, and this part's pretty bad, and it's probably gonna get bad in this channel here. So we could easily start cutting this apart and just fixing the rust, but I wanted to take some time and show you some of the fixtures I've already made and show you how to make some other fixtures. So one of the most important things is getting the hinge pillar in the correct spot. If this is too far forward or back, your firewall won't fit properly, your doors won't fit right, everything will be off. So what I like to do whenever I start a project is I have my modified frame table here. I set down my rockers on both sides, and I have these dowel pins here that locate the rockers front to back, and then I have nuts welded into the body mounts here, and I have special bolts with spacers that are cut to the perfect size of these rockers. So between the front and the back, that will locate the rockers and keep this one parallel with this one. So you want to make sure everything's level and square before you start. So we want to work front to back. So we care about this dimension from here to here. We care about this angle. We care about the angle going in. So I built this little fixture right now, just real quick. With some angle iron, where I also made this very special hole so it's the proper size, so it gets located with my bolt, and then it goes to here. I'm probably going to triangulate this a little bit, but the nice thing about this is you can use this as your template. When you cut the rockers off, you go ahead, get all your metal treated, fix whatever flanges and stuff you have to, set this back on, and now you know where your rocker needs to go. You're set up front to back, and your angle is set up. Also, if you need to take measurements, say you need to replace this cap, now boom, you have a pretty easy reference from here to here of where your cap is located. You also have a reference from here to here where the depth is and how everything fits. You can use your fixtures as a reference because nothing on a birdcage is square. This is a straight surface. This curves in. This windshield's obviously curved. These pillars aren't straight up and down. They lean back, but they also lean in. And so does every other part on the birdcage. So if you can make something that you know is square, which this also has at an angle, you can see I had to jog this over and this thing leans. But if you make a fixture and you can measure and make sure it's the same side to side, you know these measurements. So this is another known that you can add to your pile. So also, if you're trying to get your rocker set up, there's other ways you can do this, but you can use your fiberglass pieces that you have here. So this rocker would sit on top of this. This hole is centered on this body mount, roughly, and you can see these are the holes for your sill plates. These are also good measurement points because your new rocker won't have these. So what you can do is transfer these holes by taking some measurements to your new rockers, and you can use these as a point for a fixture. If you wanted to take references from here to here or here to here, whatever you want to do, just be consistent, document it, and make drawings. But the point of this is to show you that this fiberglass can be helpful to show you. So now that we've located this front hinge pillar, it's time to locate the latch pillar. And if you're removing the rockers on your car like I am on this one, you're gonna have to remove them and replace them with a new set. Whenever you remove this pillar, it's gonna be really floppy and it's easy to bend this pillar up here or damage something in the center. It's really not all that strong. So what I recommend is either bolting in or welding in some supports that go between these two pillars. And obviously take all your measurements first before you manipulate anything. Mark all those down in a good place that you know how to reference them, and then do your work. So I designed this jig to bolt in. You can see I grabbed these two bolt holes here. There is a washer here, which I have another one. I have a washer that has a very specific hole in it, and that fits the dowel pin that's in this rocker. So that locks into place and also helps locate this pillar. And then there's a cage nut back here that floats, where these nuts are welded into this pillar. So those nuts are always where they need to be, and you can locate it with those bolts. But this one floats, so what I did is I cut out in this plate the exact shape of this pillar, so that way I could bolt this in and make sure that this pillar is in the right location. Now you can weld a bar in just as easily, then you don't have to worry about that. But I like to test fit my doors, and if you bolt it in, it's easier to get it in and out. Now I also have a bar that'll go between this pillar and that'll help the cage from twisting that way. But for this cage, since I'm not building it from scratch, we're just replacing what's here, I'm gonna install the door bar on this side, that side, the tie bar across here. We'll use this bar with my diagonal bar that'll go between the two, and that'll keep the cage braced up. And then we'll replace one rocker at a time. That way everything stays pretty strong and we don't end up twisting it too much. There's not a lot of rust repair that we need to do to the birdcage once we remove the rockers, so that'll be nice. But I'm gonna try to keep everything as strong as possible so we don't lose the dimensions we have, and we'll just periodically check them. And the doors fit pretty good on this, so I think we can get this thing pretty well tacked up, pull the door bars out, test the doors, because we're gonna need to fit the doors to install the new gutters anyways. So we may as well, get it tacked, make sure we're happy with it before we full weld anything. I have a bar that comes across with legs that sit on here because the height of this rocker is important. So you could do something similar, or you can also use your fiberglass to help you. You can see that when you put this piece of door jamb fiberglass on here, you can take a measurement, get it centered up in the holes like it was, take a measurement for how thick the gap is between the rocker and the fiberglass. That'll also help get you the information. I'm just trying to help you in case you're in a situation where I've seen it before, where this pillar is completely detached, and help me, I have no dimension. You can use the other side for reference, but you can also use this. Also, put your door on. Mount up your doors. You can use your door jamb fiberglass in the process, but what I like to do is take a stack of washers that are this same thickness. You can see that this fiberglass is rather thick. I do the same thing for this fiberglass. I space my hinges out so they're the correct distance, but now this pillar is exposed so I can weld it. Get your hinges in place, put your door on, and then what you're going to want to do is the same thing back here. Put your washers in here and put your striker on. Try to get it centered. What you can do is you can literally, if it's a convertible, click your pillar into your door, and you can tell if your door is set up properly, if this pillar is set up properly. You want your door to be parallel with this surface, and you want your striker to be in the middle of the door. I don't have a striker in my hand, but here is the door latch. You don't want the striker so it's rubbing up against here. You want it floating in the middle, and you can tell there's an angle on the door here. This angle should be the same as the pillar angle, and the latch needs to engage properly, so you want to make sure it fits there. But there's a lot of information on the door that'll help you build the birdcage. You can also measure from the door up to the striker, from the rocker up to the striker, and you know that this one needs to be a little higher because the door obviously is smaller, it fits in this opening, but you can use the door to teach you a lot about this dimension. So that is kind of how I would attack the rockers, because you really care about the height, you care about the distance, you care about this distance, you care about their angles. Those are the most important things. The B-pillars, they're fairly easy to locate. You can kind of see that the rocker sticks out beyond this, and they don't fit up square. You know, there's an angle difference there, but there's a tab on this that comes underneath here and lays on top of the rocker. And there's a hole in that that's the same size as the hole in the rocker, and they're generally concentric. They're generally in the same spot. So that's a decent indication of, you know, what you want to do there. Now the windshield frame, this is an area that is very critical to get right, because your windshield is only a certain size. They make a windshield, and it should fit in here. And I made another video about fitting this up. I'm going to do a quick demo of my new product, and I'll have another video coming out whenever I officially release it. But I'm going to show you how you get this set up in here, how I recommend you get it set up in here before you start cutting apart your windshield. All right, let's try this again. I tried this a second ago, but my GoPro died. Everybody asks why I don't make videos slow time. My GoPro just died and it was at 60%. That is why. GoPros do not like to go at normal speed. So let's talk about measuring the windshield opening. I talked about this in another video, but let's go a little more in depth because I have a new product that I released that's almost ready for you guys. I still have to do another round of testing with it, but the windshield in these Corvettes is undersized because it's a rope-in gasket. It doesn't glue into this flange. So GM used this company, Kent Moore. They had a bunch of different tools that are in the service manual for these cars. But this is basically just a little block that goes and fits on the windshield channel, and it lets you space your windshield up, which is fine. It shows you that it's all parallel, which I have done that. I have made 3 variations of this block. One, I've made it a little bit wider, and I've also made multiple colors, but multiple thicknesses. These 3 are stepped. I don't know if you can tell, but the blue is the thickest, then the red, and the green is the same as this green. But the whole idea is we're going to put the windshield in with the green blocks first, and that will be our sanding check. We want to make sure that our windshield opening is not twisted, because the windshield opening tells you how to build your birdcage. And if it's twisted or it's bent or something's wrong, and you build a fixture off of your windshield, boy, you're in trouble. So before we build any fixtures, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set our green blocks on first. Another reason why I do things in time lapse, as soon as I go into slow motion video like this, nothing ever cooperates quite right. So we're going to move them somewhere in this area to start out with. We're going to take our windshield and we're going to set it in place. Now if you're doing this at home, I've got pretty close to those marks. So if you're doing this at home, I highly recommend putting some tape on your windshield like this and move your blocks to the same spot every time you check it, because this is an iterative process. You're going to want to do this several times. So if you put them all in the same place every single time, you know that you're getting the correct measurement. So now, center it here. We're going to take a Sharpie. I have the windshield mark, but to save time, I'm just going to put a mark in the center for each of these blocks where they all live. Now, I don't know if you can see it from here. Maybe I can bring you in here. So if I bring you in a little bit closer, you can see there's a gap here. This one has a little bit of a gap, and this one has a little bit of a gap. The whole idea with this tool originally was just to make sure it's parallel. So you can see the windshield and this flange back here are all on the same plane. Everything looks good. If your car was wrecked, maybe this would be a little low or a little high. Maybe your flange would be bent, but everything is parallel. That's all this tool was designed for. Now what I'm gonna do is put you guys on a pedestal. We're gonna pull the windshield back out. And I've already tested this, so I know what to do here. But we're gonna pull off all of these green blocks, I think. How many reds do I have? Okay, I lied. I didn't order enough. This is my prototype kit. But what we're gonna do is put our red, which is our next thickest. We need to space the windshield up. So I'm gonna put reds all over the windshield. And we're gonna test it one more time. And since I've done this, I know the answer. Spoiler alert, a blue goes up here. Now, what we're gonna do, put our windshield back in place. That fits there. Now keep in mind I need one more red. What I'm going to do for my kits that I sell, I'm going to have 6 green blocks, 6 red blocks, and probably 2 blue blocks. So now let's bring you guys in again. The whole idea with my kit that I'm selling is I want you to get a good representation of how big your windshield opening is, because as I'm going to show you, you can see that it's on the red blocks, which are 1/10 of an inch thicker than the green blocks. This one fits pretty decent. And you can see this one is nice and snug. That's good. This tells you a lot of information because this windshield's curved, nothing's square. You really can't take a good measurement from here to here. But what this tells you is that this block is snug, this block is snug. So if you're building, say you're putting a new top on your windshield where you have this removed, you know that if you put your windshield in here and you get this fitment, you can tack it, you're good. Now look at this side, same thing, red, but this one has a blue. So this is a factory Birdcage, hasn't been cut up, and you can see that there's a tolerance, in case you were wondering. This side is higher than that side, and this side should have a red block. You can see it's a little loose, but that's coming in the next iteration of the kit. So what this tells me is my windshield, 1, the windshield opening is correct, but 2, I know my measurements. So what I would do now is you can use, if you have a simple repair to do, say just replacing one side, an outer, maybe just this top cross member, maybe this bottom cross member, this is fine. You can just get away probably with making this type of a repair using these blocks. I also have a more extreme setup that I'll show you. It's a full steel cage, and I recommend if you're doing some heavy construction or you're building multiple cars, I would recommend doing something like that. So we're going to pull this windshield plug out. I'll show you that one. So the green blocks are first used to verify the overall shape. These other blocks are to verify the size and get you within 1/10. You can also sand these. The blue ones are good because say you need an in-between the size, you can just sand it down. No harm, no foul. So now we'll take this out. Now that we know the exact shape and size of our windshield. So this guy is rather aggressive looking. That's about how it fits. So this guy I made early on the YouTube channel because I wanted to capture a friend's birdcage. It gives many dimensions. I built a lot of other fixtures off of that birdcage as well. But I set this one up with a bunch with a bunch of little tabs here that I can put clamps on the whole way around. And if you don't know, Birdcage windshields have an inner and outer of every single piece I'm going to list off, but there's a bottom cross member, there's two corners that go up to about here, there's these outer corners, or these upper corners, and then there's the center windshield bar. So there's a lot of pieces that all need to be welded together. If you're building one from scratch, well, you could just buy it jig assembled. That's probably the best way to do it if you need to replace a whole windshield frame. But if you're replacing a bottom or the corners, really any section, you want to make sure you get it right, because if you get it wrong, your windshield could leak, the glass might not fit at all, your doors won't fit up against it. It's a very important piece to have right. So if you're doing extensive surgery, I recommend having this piece, but this also can lead you astray. Let me show you. So this is the pillar I'm going to use to replace this side, and whenever it mounts on this pedestal over here, you can kind of move it all around. You can angle it. These two are pretty obvious how these fit, but it's not obvious how this fits on here. I recommend building a paper template for this, which I can show you later. But the important thing here is this flange. You see how small it is? It's not very deep. And when you put a clamp on here with a fixture that's this heavy, with this much steel, I had to make it heavy just to make it rigid. The clamp and the fixture can walk on here, which can give you a false measurement. Even though you're using this fixture, if you clamp it at the bottom and you're putting a top on this windshield, it actually can lie and it can lean back and it can give you a false impression. So a lot of times what I'll do, because this is so heavy, I'll pick it up with a chain on the chain hoist in the center and tilt it up. So that way it sits more like this, where you can see it wants to slouch. I kind of pick up on it, because if you don't do something like that, your whole windshield's laid down too far, which is one of the reasons why I liked this windshield idea to use these blocks. This is obviously a lot cheaper, this is a lot lighter, a lot smaller than this, a lot quicker to make too, because you can just buy them rather than fabricating it yourself. So what I recommend doing for heavy construction, mild to heavy construction, buy this kit and do this approach. Light work, I recommend just this. But in this case, either approach, you're going to want to first stop rocking. That's what you're going to want first. Either way, you're going to want to make sure you verify the shape and size and make sure the heater doesn't turn on while you're recording your video. You're going to want to make sure that the shape and size is correct on your windshield and you can replicate it. Then you're going to want to take your fixture out. You're going to cut your birdcage up, which you'll see not in Friday's video, but the week after. I'm going to cut this corner of the birdcage off and we're going to replace it with the metal I just showed you. And we want to make sure it's in the right place. So we're going to screw it in place or Cleco it in place, tack it in place. And I'm going to use this to help me, but I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to put these back in with my windshield and make sure we get it 100% right before we keep going forward. And then once we're happy with it, we're going to weld it, and I'm going to check it with both this and my little kit to make sure it's perfect, because if this is wrong, you're in trouble. So I recommend doing that for the whole birdcage. Use your fixture, check it. Use a piece of fiberglass, check it. Use your door, check it. Always triple check everything. When you weld something, things move. When you weld something here, something over there could change. So the whole moral of the story is mock everything up as much as you possibly can to make sure you get it right. That's my moral. So these will be on the These will be on the website very soon. I'm waiting for a batch. They should be coming in. The holiday, they're a little bit later, but they should be coming in by the end of this week, the week that you're seeing this video. And if I'm happy with them, I'm going to put them on the website. Like I said, I may offer a couple different kits. Maybe I'll just offer this green one just to replicate the original ones. And then I'll sell my kit that's designed to fit your windshield. So with all this information, you should be in pretty good shape to start on your birdcage, to start building your fixtures, and then you can start asking questions for how does this fit. If you have a question, go to your fiberglass. If you have a question beyond that, look at the assembly manual, understand how the whole assembly works, because every single piece interacts with other pieces. Corvettes and Camaros and other cars have panels that lap over top of each other. Therefore, the panel, if you're trying to figure out where this bottom one goes, the one on top can help give you some clues for that. You saw when I built the Camaro, whenever I was putting the roof structure, the quarter panel, the roof skin, the rocker, the wheelhouses all in at the same time, I mocked them all up and I made adjustments. You're gonna have to make adjustments. That's part of the gig, it's part of the game. But this is just to get you guys started. So hopefully that helps. Next week we'll be cutting this Birdcage apart. First removing the gutters. Then I'll probably work on the rockers next, and then maybe the windshield frame. That's probably the plan, and then we'll tackle the rust in the back of the B pillars, and then we'll put new gutters on it. That's the plan. I have more fixtures that I wanted to show you, I think, too. I might just put pictures of those up, because I don't know where they are. But that's the rough plan. Hopefully this helps. All Corvettes are basically coach built. The idea is to get it as close to your car as possible, not necessarily the way that somebody else's car is. You can ask other people for advice online, but it's really hard to put a tape measure on one of these and get an accurate measurement and give to somebody and have them replicate it in their shop and have those two cars end up exactly the same when you're done. I'm not saying that anybody doesn't know how to read a tape measure out there, but whenever nothing's parallel and square, it's really hard to accurately do it. So that's my recommendation. Hopefully this information, you can use it and go forward, and you can watch along as I rebuild this Birdcage, and hopefully that helps, because these are all common areas of interest for rust repair. If you're building one from scratch and you don't have any dimensions, look harder. They're still there, but you may have more questions if you're building one from scratch, like I did the Misfit. The Misfit Birdcage wasn't perfect. I built it, it took a long time. I scratched my head a lot. The car worked out, the car sold for a lot of money. So it's possible to build one from scratch if you don't know what you're doing, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I learned the hard way. I knew what questions to ask at that point. I had a friend help me, and I've been able to build some fixtures. So build fixtures, take measurements, take pictures. If you don't have any idea what you're doing, take a step, walk away, and think about it overnight. Don't rush into it if it's your first one, because you don't want to mess up the car that you have. But you just got to kind of jump into it, and I hope this helps. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I have a lot of work to do, so I'll catch you guys later.